Okay, here we are. This is the raid on Saint Nazaire by the Avalon Hill Company, 1987. This game was designed by Rob Markham, and it is a game about that famous British raid on the French port of Saint Nazaire, 1942, by British commandos. The commandos start the game in this approach zone here, 17 motorboats, and we have the destroyer Campbelltown. They will move here to Zone A, to Zone B, will disembark a substantial number of commandos here on the Old Mole. We will follow the historical objectives and landing areas. Another group of motorboats and the destroyer will crash here into the southern Caisson and demolish that target, which is worth 12 victory points, and also disembark a number of commandos that will bomb targets in each of the islands here. The Germans, obviously, with all the noise that the British are going to make, will wake up, and through the mechanism of a randomizer cup, German units will be deployed randomly into one of 6 areas. You see that each of these islands has a number, so it will be either area 1, 2, 3, or this area here is 4, or a reinforcement areas. We have reinforcement area 5. We have 2 reinforcement areas with the number 5 and 2 with a 6, one here and the other one over here. And the purpose of the British is to cause as much havoc and destruction as possible, so the demolishing of targets will earn them victory points. However, losses in their flotilla and commando units will subtract victory points. We will keep track of the losses on the British flotilla here with this game log, and also the victory point score. To win, the British need 70 or more victory points at the end of the game, and we have, I believe, approximately 20 turns. So let's begin. Okay, here we are, the raid on Saint Nazaire, and these are the starting positions. We see here the British flotilla starting here in the approach zone, 17 motorboats and the destroyer Campbelltown, and they will be fired upon since the first turn. There's this searchlight marker here, which will provide a defensive bonus for the Germans when firing, and this is on account of this searchlight here in space 412. So that flotilla is going to come under fire, and it will continue moving in this direction to through Zone A, and from there to Zone B, and it will disembark a significant number of commandos in Zone B, and they will be attacking various targets in the vicinity of the old town. And we have, for example, the power station, we have these 2 swing bridges, and this lock gate here are the targets for the commandos that will disembark there. The rest of the commandos in the Campbelltown will continue moving into C zone here C. The Campbelltown will crash into the southern Caisson here. The Campbelltown is loaded with explosives in its bow, and the commandos will disembark and attack these targets here, the southern winding station, this gun emplacement. There's a swing bridge here, and then we have the northern Caisson here, and the northern winding station, and we have this swing bridge here. Meanwhile, the Germans will be spawning from different points of the city to try to stop that. And nearing the end of the game, the explosives on the Campbelltown will be detonated to see if the southern Caisson is destroyed. Also, there are other targets of opportunity that we have here. If the commandos are lucky enough, they may be able to go this way into here, the U-boat pens. These are the constructed U-boat pens, and these are the ones under construction. But as I said before, Germans will be spawning from different points of the map and converging upon the commandos. The surviving commandos will then rendezvous with the surviving flotilla motorboats, and will then depart the port this way into Zone A, and again into the approach zone, from there to the open sea, and once in the open sea, they will be subject to possible attack by aircraft, patrol boats, and destroyers. So the mission for the British is a victory if they manage to accumulate 70 victory points at the end of the game. And the various targets that I mentioned here are worth a different amount of victory points. The most important targets here are the northern and southern Caisson, each worth 12 victory points. These stations are worth 4. And there are various targets that I've shown to you. Most of them are worth 4 victory points. We will keep track of the losses to the commandos and the crews aboard the Campbelltown and the motorboats here on this sheet. See here we have the strength of the crew, which will be kept track here, the number of guns and torpedoes, passengers. Here are each of the commando units that each motorboat in the Campbelltown is transporting, and their primary targets, which we showed you on the map with the pink discs. As the flotilla loses guns, that is kept track here on the flotilla gun display. It starts with 45, but once it gets to 37, there will be a +1 on the British covering fire table, and that will reflect a diminished strength on the firepower of the whole flotilla. And the victory points will be kept tracked here. Here we have our goal of 70 victory points. And we'll show you at the beginning of the game the flotilla. We will be using this approach zone display to keep record of what happens to each motorboat and the Campbelltown as they approach their respective targets. You see here the Campbelltown carrying 6 commando units. The ones with the red stripes are demolition teams. The other ones are assault teams. And each demolition team has their historical target, which we are going to use in this game. As the boats absorb damage, they may be called to lose speed, so they would be flipped to their reduced speed side. So we start with turn number 1, 0, 1, 28 hours. First phase is the gun searchlight restoration phase. This will be skipped in this turn. However, note that the searchlight in space 412 reflects a beam that covers the whole approach zone and will affect the to-hit die roll of the Germans in the harbor defense table with a -1. So we go now to the harbor defense table phase, and the Germans will have a pre-designated or free shot against the Campbelltown, which is an automatic hit, and then up to 12 shots that will be randomly determined among the gunboats and the Campbelltown. And if the Germans miss 1 shot, then it stops there. So they have up to 12 shots. So just to give you a sense of how these work, let's resolve first the pre-designated shot on the Campbelltown. So the Campbelltown is here, and it receives 1 shot, which directly hits the Campbelltown, and now we will roll on the harbor defense table to see the effect. We roll 2 dice on the harbor defense table. The results with asterisk do not affect the Campbelltown. The result is a 6, turn away, but it is an asterisk result, so it does not affect the Campbelltown. But we have KO, meaning that the Campbelltown loses 1 crew box and 1 gun box. So we go to the log and we cross 1 crew box, so Campbelltown has 9 left, and 1 gun box, it has 11 left, and because we lost a gun from the flotilla, we also cross off the first box in the flotilla gun display. Okay, so that was the pre-designated hit against the Campbelltown. We'll mark it with a large red marker. Now, the Germans have up to 12 additional shots, but these are not automatic. The Germans will roll what is called a triad, and the number will be red, first digit the red, second the yellow, and the third digit is the white die. The red will determine if there is a hit, and the Germans need 5 or less for a hit, but because we have this beam that I showed you before from searchlight in space 412, that beam will cause that a -1 be applied against the whole flotilla. Now, we'll start rolling. We'll roll the first shot, and the result is a 543. So it is a hit because it is 5 or less, and 43 means the identity of the boat that got hit, and it is Stevens' motor launch here was hit. So now we roll on the harbor defense table to see the effect of that hit. And we have here a small version of the harbor defense table. We roll now 2 dice and read it as a total. The result is a 4, fire, and a knockout result. So an on fire marker will be placed on Stevens' boat here, and it'll be flipped to its reduced speed side. Place the fire marker on Stevens' boat, and if during a subsequent phase that boat receives another fire result, it will explode with no survivors. But for now, we record the loss of the crew of the knockout result, a crew box, and 1 gun box also lost, and that has an effect on the flotilla, which has now 2 guns crossed off. Now that was the first shot. The Germans have up to 12 shots unless they miss first. We will not show each of the shots. We will resolve this phase and then report what happened. The Germans managed to fire all 12 shots, and it was devastating. The Beard, this motor launch here, was set afire once, set afire a second time, exploding with no survivors. Okay, we've marked the hits with pink markers. Rodier was hit 3 times. Boyd, Stevens, and Knock are on fire. Wynne was hit twice, and the Campbelltown with the pre-designated shot and hit 1 more time. We see here that the flotilla gun display now is at +1 because of the losses of the guns aboard the motor launches that were hit. We have, for example, the Wynne's motor launch has 2 crew and 2 gun hits, and on the commandos, the only unit apart from Moss, which was lost, that suffered any hits was Haynes' unit aboard Rodier's motor launch that suffered 2 strength point loss. We see here on the game log the loss of Beard with everyone aboard. We see that the commandos also lost 2 strength points in Haynes' unit aboard Rodier, and the flotilla gun display is at +1 because of the substantial number of losses in guns. So a +1 will be applied to the British attack in the covering fire table, and that's the phase that comes now, where the British will select several targets, roll until they miss, and this +1 will be applied. If they roll a 6 or more, they miss. Now we go to the covering fire table phase. The flotilla will pick a target, roll a triad, and the yellow and white dice will be read as a dice roll. And if it is 2 to 7, the target is hit. If it is 8 or more, it is the end of the phase. If the target is hit, we use the red die roll to determine the effect of whether the target is destroyed, out of action, or disrupted. So now the British select 1 target. Among the targets, we have the searchlight that is projecting this beam here in the approach zone, which is in space 412, and as per the rules, at this time we add another searchlight marker for the searchlight in space 342, which is here in the old mole here. This is space 342. So the flotilla will begin by firing at the searchlight here in space 412. Okay, these 2 dice are read together, 6. And we have to add a +1 because of the status of the flotilla gun display. So it is 7, and it is barely enough to score a hit. And the hit is a 6, target disrupted. We place this disrupt marker here, side by side with the affected searchlight, and that causes the beam marker in the approach zone to be flipped to its ineffective side. And now the British have a second shot, but with an additional +1 for each subsequent shot after the first. Okay, so we will now select this target, the lighthouse searchlight in space 342, and now there is a +2 die roll modifier. And the result is an 11, so that is an end of phase result. So there's no more fire on the covering fire table for this turn from the flotilla. Now we go to the dockside defensive fire phase, and the Germans have guns that can fire into Zone A, and the rules state that any gun that can fire at Zone A can fire here at the approach zone. So what we will do is now flip to its fire side each gun that can fire on Zone A, whether it is its primary, secondary, or tertiary fire zone. Okay, we just flipped those. Those are the ones that are showing now the already fired side. We flipped a total of 6, but the rules state that the maximum is 5. So we're going to place this marker here in the approach zone as a reminder. And now we have a total of 6 shots, but the maximum to hit number is 5. And we apply the -1 for the searchlight in space 342 here that was not knocked out by the flotilla in the preceding phase. So the first shot, we consult the red die, it is 5, it is a hit, and the boat that is hit is here Bert. We roll 2 dice to determine the effect. We roll a 2, sinking. So we mark this boat with a sunk marker, which really means that it is sinking, and the British have this turn to rescue the survivors, and we mark off half of the crew and half of the commandos that are being transported. So the crew lost 3 strength points, half of its strength point, and Woodcock's demolition squad also loses half of its members. It's left to 3 strength points, so we flip it to its reduced side. That was the first shot. We will now proceed to resolve up to 5 additional shots and then report the results of the German dockside defensive fire phase. Here we have the results of the dockside defensive fire. We have here Boyd's motorboat was hit and set on fire again, exploding, and all hands were lost. At least no commandos were aboard Boyd's motor launch. Falconer was hit and Hodgson lost half of its strength in assault commandos. Bert, the launch that is sinking, has half of Woodcock's surviving demolition squad available to be rescued. And here Rodier was hit and Haynes lost 2 of its 6 strength points in that attack. Now comes the naval movement phase, and during the first 2 turns, no boat can expend more than 2 movement factors per turn, and that will affect Ryder, that has a movement factor of 3, and Wind, that has a movement factor of 4. We have Bert's boat sinking, so some other boat will have to pick up Woodcock's reduced demolition squad. So in the flotilla, we have 4 boats that will not be able to move at all: Bert's sinking boat, and Falconer, Rodier, and Wynne, which have turnaway markers that reduce their movement to 0 for this turn. We will mark with these pink discs those boats that cannot move in this movement phase. During the movement phase, the motorboats can move and also execute torpedo attacks, and we have here Irwin that has torpedo capability as well as Fenton, and it may be a good idea to launch a torpedo attack against this ship here, the Sparbreaker, that has 2 powerful guns aboard. Okay, so we start by moving Irwin's motor launch 1 movement factor to enter Zone A, and it'll spend its second and last movement factor in attacking the spare breaker with its torpedo. So we roll a die on the torpedo attack table. And it is a 6, no effect. So Irwin's torpedo attack fails. And the other boat that is capable of moving and making a torpedo attack is Fenton. So Fenton moves here, 1 movement factor, and spends its second and last movement factor in launching another torpedo attack against the spare breaker. We roll on the torpedo attack table and another 6. Missed, no effect. 2 failed torpedo attacks against the spare breaker, and that flotilla is going to pay in the next turn for that. So there are no more motor launches with torpedo capability that can move in this movement phase, so we will proceed to move all launches that can move and the Campbelltown. These are the position of the remaining motor launches before movement. We have here Fenton and Irwin that already moved and launched their failed torpedo attacks. So we have 6 motorboats here in Zone B as well as the Campbelltown. These 6 motorboats will deliver its commandos upon the Old Mole according to the mission's plans, and the Campbelltown will continue this way towards the southern Quezon. We have 2 boats, Stevens and Knack, which were slowed down by previous fire, and they could only reach Zone A together with the 2 boats that failed the torpedo mission. And we have the 4 boats here that could not move, including Bert's sinking boat, now Ryder, which has 2 movement points, because in the first turn you can only move up to 2. We'll use 1 movement point to pick up the passengers and crew of Bert's boat, and then we'll use the remaining movement point to move to Zone A, and Ryder stops there. So Ryder manages to rescue 2 of Bert's crews and 3 of Woodcock's commandos, so a total of 5 passengers, and we mark the 5 passengers here in the log. Now, for game purposes, Woodcock's unit will not be a participant in the action anymore, so we remove it from the game. And we remove Bert's boat because it sank, so it's out of the game. Okay, we finished the naval movement phase. Now it would be the loading unloading phase, where the commandos would unload if they were on a coastal area, but they're not. So now we go to the next phase, which is the German activation phase, and we make a dice roll on the German unit activation table to determine the number of German units that will be activated. Now we roll 2 dice, and in the first turn there's a -3 die roll modifier to this activation table dice roll. So we rolled an 8. -3 is 5, so we will roll 4 triads, because we're going to draw 4 units from the random cup here. And you'll see that the Germans have that white 1, because that's the alarm level. When we draw all the alarm 1 units, we place alarm 2 units in the cup. So now we will roll a total of 4 times to determine where these units appear. So we will draw 4 units from the cup. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we drew 2 4-strength units and 2 2-strength units, and now we're going to roll a triad for each one of them to see where they are placed on the map. So this unit will be placed in the area marked 332, which is in Zone 3. So here is area 332, and we place a unit there. For the next unit, we rolled a 214. So area 214 is actually aboard one of these harbor defense boats, so we place that unit there. The next unit, we roll 546. Area 5 is the western reinforcement area, and there are 2 spaces 46 falls here in the rightmost space, so we place the unit here and it will enter the map the next turn. And the last unit enters at space 353. Now, there's no 353 printed. There appears to be a mistake here. There's a 335 and another 335, but I surmise that 353 should be this one, and this is a typo, so the unit will be placed here in this space. Okay, now it will be the land movement phase, and the commandos would move, but the commandos haven't disembarked yet, so they can't move, and the Germans don't move because there's no commandos in any areas, land areas yet. There's no land combat phase, there's no demolition phase, so we go directly to the end of turn. So now we go to turn number 2, 0134 hours. Okay, now we go to the gun searchlight restoration phase. And the searchlight in space 412 is disrupted, so we roll to see if it is operational again. And the roll is a 7, so we remove the disruption marker and it is functioning normally again. Now we roll for each functioning searchlight 1 die, and you see there's 3 zones that it illuminates, Z, A, and 3 in the case of this searchlight. And 1 through 3 it will be Z, 4 or 5 will be A, and 6 it will be zone 3. So the result is a 1, so it will illuminate zone Z. And to show you where zone Z is, just backtrack a little bit, and we'll put the corresponding marker there as a reminder that that zone is illuminated. We do the same thing and roll now for the searchlight in space 342. And it rolled a 4, so it's going to illuminate zone A, which is here, so we'll place a marker here for zone A. Have another searchlight here in space 142, and it rolled a 4, so it's going to illuminate space or zone C. And zone C is where the southern caisson is, so we'll place a marker there as a reminder. Finally, we have the searchlight in space 432. 5, so it's going to illuminate zone 3. And zone 3 is the island here with the old town, so we're going to put the marker right here beside the 3 to signify that it's illuminated. Now the rules state that no land zone is eligible for illumination until the turn after the commandos have landed. The commandos have not landed yet, so the rules also say that the searchlight that has rolled in an eligible zone will illuminate the first eligible zone listed in its illumination code. So this is a 432. The first eligible zone in its illumination code are all land zones, 4, 3, and 2. So there, it doesn't have a single eligible one, so it illuminates its own area, which is zone 4 back here. So we'll just place it here. Okay, now we go to the harbor defense table. The Germans have up to 12 shots, but there are some pre-designated shots. We will not use the display we used before because we have boats in 2 separate areas. What we will do is we will execute the pre-designated shots. It will be 1 on the Campbelltown here and 1 on each boat that is on fire, Stevens and Knock, and after that then we will execute the shots up to 12 shots on the harbor defense table. Okay, we marked here the targets of the pre-designated shots. Campbelltown got a hit which reduced to half-strength Chance demolition squad, and we have Knock and Stevens getting pre-designated hits also, which reduced their crews and guns. The flotilla gun display is now at +1 with 34. So we have here the boats and the Campbelltown, which are in Zone B, the boats that are in Zone A, and these are still in the approach zone. Now we will execute the regular shots up to 12. In addition to the pre-designated shots, the Germans managed to effect 6 more hits, missing on their 7th attempt. Notably, here we have Stevens' boat is sinking with Burns' squad, which will be out of action. Henderson's boat is also sinking with Swain's demolition squad that will be out of action. Falconar sustained 2 hits with a turnaway result, and Hodgson's assault team is at half strength. So these are the boats in the approach zone, Zone A and Zone B. See, the brunt of the casualties in this round of German fire were sustained by the boats in Zone A, with the Stevens, which is sinking, Knock on fire and turning away. Well, that means it won't be able to move. And we also have Irwin here with a turn away, won't be able to move, as well as Ryder, which will be able only to move, actually will not be able to move either, because in the second turn they can only move up to 2. Meanwhile, the boats here in Zone B were mostly unaffected, with the exception of Henderson, which is sinking. All the remaining boats will be able to discharge their commandos there, and the Campbelltown will continue moving into Zone C. Okay, here we have the game log. Now we have Henderson and Stevens, which are sinking, and that would be a total of 5 boats sunk. We have casualties for the commandos, which are increasing here. We have Chant, which is at half strength, and we have some units that will be out of action, like Hodgson and like Burns, so they will not be available to continue the mission. British covering fire phase, and we'll have the first hit against this gun emplacement in space 336 to soften up then the German Dockside defensive fire. So we roll 2 dice. The result is a 7, but when we look at the flotilla gun display, we add a +1, it is 8, end of turn, so a very short-lived covering fire phase with no effect. German Dockside defensive fire. As to Zone B, we have 2 guns here, 1 and 2, which will fire on Zone B, and also we have a gun here, which is in zone, its primary zone is C, its tertiary is B, but since there's no ships in C or D, it will fire at its tertiary target, so it's flipped also. So we have a total of 3 guns firing on the fleet, or on the flotilla, that is in space B. And that will be the to-hit number 3. As to Zone A, the things don't look better for the British commandos. We have these 2 guns in the Spearbreaker, which will fire into Zone A. Plus we have this gun here in space 312, this other gun here in space 311, and even this gun here in space 411. So it is a total of 5 guns firing on the boats in Zone A. The results of the Dockside defensive fire on the boats in Zone A. We have here Irwin sustaining 2 hits, as well as Ryder, and Ryder's on fire. Fenton sustained 1 hit. We have Stevens continuing to sink and on fire. So this part of the flotilla has been hit very hard and may not be able to disembark most of its commandos in the upcoming turn. Here we have the boats in Zone A, which have been hit hard. Stevens is sinking and on fire, as well as Knock and Ryder, who are on fire, will not be able to move in the upcoming movement phase, and Irwin will not be able to move either. The only boat that will be able to move is Fenton, who will continue into Zone B. We will probably see these boats here in the approach area coming to the rescue of survivors in Zone A. Now we proceed to resolve the German Dockside defensive fire in Zone B. Different from Zone A, the to-hit number here is 3, and there's no searchlight modifier favorable to the Germans, and the Germans will only have up to 3 shots. So we see that the Germans were lucky enough to score 2 hits before missing on the 3rd attempt, and one was a hit on the Campbelltown, setting it on fire. Luckily no casualties aboard the commandos here, and a hit on Collier's boat, which reduced Walton's demolition squad to half strength. So here are the boats in the Campbelltown and Zone B after German Dockside defensive fire.